The ice field stretched endlessly in every direction, glittering under the distant sun. David Rees had been watching the same view for 8 months now. It was easier than thinking about anything else. His workstation chirped. A proximity alert. Something had entered the outer detection grid, moving fast and losing altitude. David pulled up the scanner data, expecting space debris. The moon of Titan's Gate collected junk like a magnet, but this thing was trying to slow down. Computer classification, David said. Escape pod. Impact in 90 seconds. David grabbed his thermal suit and pulled it on. 8 months alone taught you to move fast when something happened, the airlock cycled. He stepped into cold that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. His suit heated immediately, but he still felt the bite of it. He climbed onto his terrain rover and punched in the coordinates. 2 kilometers through snow drifts. The crash site was easy to spot. A dark scar cut through the white, ending in a crumpled pod half buried in snow. Steam rose where heated metal met frozen ground. The pod was small. The hull was damaged, but emergency systems still ran. David found a manual release and pulled. Inside, curled around a failing heat core, was something he'd never seen before. It was roughly the size of a large dog, covered in scales that shifted between blue and green. For legs, 2 small arms, a long tail wrapped tight, wings folded close, and a face that was unmistakably intelligent, twisted in pain and fear. A dragon. The creature's eyes snapped open. Gold, bright against the dim interior. It tried to move, but was too weak. David held up his hand slowly. Easy. I'm not going to hurt you. The dragon made a sound between a whimper and a hiss. Its scales were dull, frost forming on the edges. The core was dying. I have a warm place. Food. But we need to go now. Can you move? The dragon stared at him, then slowly shook its head. David reached in and carefully lifted the creature. It weighed less than expected. Through his gloves, he felt how cold it was, how it trembled. The dragon didn't fight, just tucked its head against David's chest. Inside the station, warmth hit them. David carried the dragon to his medical bay and set it on the examination table. He cranked the heat up and piled on emergency blankets. Computer analysis, he said, running the scanner. Species unknown. Reptilian classification. Severe hypothermia. Dehydration. Minor contusions. Treatment. Heat. Fluids. Rest. David set up a heating pad. The dragon watched him with gold eyes, tracking every movement. Afraid but too tired to run. Let's try something, David said. He activated his translation matrix. Can you understand me? The dragon was quiet. Then a voice came through, high and young. Yes, you are human. I am. My name is David. What's yours? Pip. It means small spark in your language. Pip, David repeated. You're safe here. This is a research station. I'm the only one on it. Pip's eyes narrowed. Humans are the endurance ones. You survive the death world. You need nothing from anyone. You are strong and cold. David felt something twist in his chest. We're strong, maybe, but we're not cold. Not really, but you are alone here, in this frozen place. You do not seem bothered. Being alone and liking it are different things, David said quietly. He pulled up the food synthesizer. What do you eat? Pip listed nutrients. The computer created a paste. David heated it and offered it over. The dragon ate slowly, watching. When finished, he looked exhausted. Sleep, David said. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. You will study me, Pip said. I'll help you, David corrected. Then we'll find your family. Pip's tail curled tighter. My clutch. The transport. There was an accident. I'll search the databases. Rest now. The dragon's eyes were closing. David dimmed the lights and turned to go. David. He stopped. Yes. Do you feel cold too? Even here in the warmth? David looked back at the small dragon, alone and afraid and far from home. He thought about the empty halls, the messages he never answered, the cold that had nothing to do with temperature. All the time, he said. Then he left Pip to sleep. 3 days passed in careful routine. David checked on Pip every few hours. The dragon's color had returned, bright scales catching the lights. His temperature was stable. Physically, he was healing, But something else was wrong. Pip barely touched his food. He curled tighter each day instead of relaxing. His scales were losing their shine, even as his body temperature improved. The databases came back, David said during one check-in. Your family's transport did report an accident. 3 weeks ago, they recovered everyone. Pip's head lifted. Everyone. That's what the log says. They must have counted wrong. I've sent a message with your location. The dragon nodded and put his head back down. David frowned. He pulled up medical files on Pip's species. The Drakens, a social race from a warm planet. Known for close family bonds, he found a section that made him stop. Social needs. Drakens required regular physical touch for health. Isolation could cause symptoms. Loss of appetite, lethargy, scale deterioration. In extreme cases, death, touch starvation. David looked at Pip, curled alone in the medical bay. Computer, raised temperature in common area by 10 degrees. He went to Pip. You're cleared medically. Want to move to the common area? More space. Better view. Pip's eyes opened. I am fine here. You're not eating. The change might help. I am not hungry. David crouched beside the table. Pip, I read about your species. I know what's happening. The dragon's tail twitched. You know I am dying? You're touch-starved. It's treatable. Not by you. Pip's voice was flat. My clutch. We sleep together. Eat together. We are never separate. Constant confirmation that we are not alone. I can help with that, David said. Pip laughed, bitter. You? You do not even touch yourself. I have watched you. You hold rigid. You maintain distance from everything. You are human. You endure isolation. David sat back. The dragon wasn't wrong. 2 years of walls. The idea of touch felt foreign. Dangerous, but Pip needed it to survive. Let me try, David said. I'm not good at this, but I can learn. Why? Pip's eyes were fierce despite his weakness. I am nothing to you. Because you asked me if I feel cold too, David said quietly. And I do. All the time. Maybe you don't know how to fix that for myself, but I can try to fix it for you. Pip extended one small arm, clawed hand opened. David's hand was shaking when he reached out. Their hands met. Pip's scales were warm, smooth. The dragon's claws rested gently against David's palm. Then Pip's fingers curled, holding on. Your heart is racing, Pip said softly. You are afraid. Yeah, David admitted. Of me, of this. David didn't pull away. I haven't touched anyone in 2 years. He didn't finish. Pip didn't push. They sat there, hands connected. It is a start, Pip said finally. For both of us. David helped Pip move to the common area. The dragons settled on the cushioned bench. The view screen showed the ice fields, stars emerging. Over the next days, they fell into new patterns. David would check vitals, resting a hand on Pip's back for seconds longer than necessary. When they ate together, Pip would brush his tail against David's leg, clinical. Controlled. But something Pip started eating. His scales brightened. He asked questions about David's work, about Earth. We adapt, David said when asked about Earth. It's what we do. But you adapt alone, Pip observed. Your stories are about individuals. Single humans facing impossible odds. We're your clutch stories. David thought. We have them. Teams, families, crews. But yeah, our heroes are usually alone. That sounds exhausting. It is, David said. Then added, I had a family. A wife. A daughter. They died 2 years ago. Transport accident. Pip's tail wrapped around David's wrist. I am sorry. Everyone was. Everyone wanted to help. But I didn't know how to let them. So I came here. To endure alone. Yeah, that sounds very lonely, Pip said. David looked at the dragon, at the tail on his wrist. It is. That night, when nightmares came and David woke gasping, he found Pip at his door. I heard you, the dragon said. May I stay? David almost said no. Almost rebuilt the walls. Instead, he moved over. Pip curled at the foot of the bed, warm and solid. And for the first time in 2 years, David fell back asleep, not alone. The message from Pip's family arrived on a morning when frost patterns looked like wings. David read it twice before calling for Pip. They responded, Your clutch. They're sending a ship. 3 weeks. Pip's wings fluttered. 3 weeks. You'll be home soon. The dragon nodded slowly. He should have been excited. Instead, he looked concerned, They'd fallen into rhythms over the past week. Pip would drape his tail over David's shoulders while the human worked. During meals, they sat close. At night, Pip slept at the foot of David's bed. Tea was helping. Both slept better. Pip's scales had full brightness. David talked more, sharing locked-away memories, but Pip watched him with increasing worry. "You hold yourself differently when communications come," Pip said during lunch. "Your shoulders rise. Your breathing changes." "Professional courtesy," David said. "Fear," Pip corrected. "You are afraid of them." "Not afraid. Uncomfortable." "Why?" David set down his fork. "Because they wanted to be okay. And I'm not. And I don't know how to explain that without making them feel like they failed." Pip tilted his head. "So you pretend to be okay and isolate further. And the cycle continues. When did you get so wise?" "I am observant. It is a clutch skill. We learn to read each other, to sense distress before it is spoken." Pip's tail twitched. "You are very distressed, David. All the time. But you have become skilled at hiding it." David walked to the window. The ice field stretched forever. "After the accident, everyone treated me like I might break. Every conversation was careful. Every look was pity. I couldn't stand it. I needed space where I could exist without performing grief. So you came to the most isolated posting. Seemed logical at the time." Pip joined him. "And now I have a dragon lecturing me about emotional health. I am observing." Pip leaned against David's leg. The contact was becoming natural. "In my culture, isolation is the worst punishment. We cannot survive it long." "Humans can survive it," David said. "We're good at surviving." "Surviving is not the same as living." Pip looked up. "You taught me that humans are the endurance ones. You face death worlds and persist. The galaxy admires this. But I think it is also your greatest weakness." "How so?" "Because you have learned to endure so well that you forget you do not have to. You think needing help makes you weak. So you endure alone and call it strength." David was quiet. Outside, a meteor streaked across the sky. "You're not wrong," he said finally. Over the next days, Pip pushed gently. When David tensed during calls, Pip would rest a claw on his hand. When David withdrew, Pip asked questions requiring real answers. "Tell me about your daughter." David froze. "Pip, you never speak of her. Or your wife. You mention them once, then seal the words away." Pip's eyes were gentle. "In my clutch, we speak of those who pass. We share memories. We keep them alive in stories. I just can't." "Why?" "Because if I start, I might not stop." David's voice was rough. "If I let myself remember, really remember, I'll drown in it." "You're already drowning," Pip said quietly. "You're just doing it alone." That night, David finally talked. About his wife's laugh. About his daughter's obsession with stars. About the last morning, ordinary and perfect, before everything ended. Pip listened, tail wrapped around David's arm. When David's voice broke, Pip didn't look away. When tears came, the dragon moved closer. "This is good," Pip said. "This is healing. It doesn't feel like healing. Healing hurts. But you are not alone in it anymore." Days fell into new patterns. David responded to messages with more honesty. "Having a rough day. Missing them today. Working on it." His colleagues responded with relief, support, their own struggles. He'd spent 2 years thinking he was sparing them his pain. Instead, he'd locked them out. Pip watched with satisfaction. "You are learning." "Learning what?" "That walls keep out pain, but they also keep out everything else." 2 weeks before the ship, a solar storm hit. Power fluctuated. In the darkness, alarms wailing, David felt panic rise. The accident had happened during a storm. Alarms had been the last thing he'd heard. He was on the floor, breathing too fast, when Pip found him. The dragon didn't speak. He just curled around David, scales warm, present solid. Weight and warmth and proof he wasn't alone. When power returned and alarms stopped, David was shaking but breathing. "Thank you," he whispered out. Pip's response was simple. "That is what clutch does." "I'm not your clutch." "No," Pip agreed. "But you were someone who needed holding, and I was here. Sometimes it is that simple." David pulled the dragon closer. "You're going home soon. Back to your real family." "Yes," Pip said. "But I wonder, what will you do? Will you stay here? Keep enduring alone?" "I don't know. David admitted. This place doesn't feel like a refuge anymore. It just feels empty. Good, Pip said. That is progress. How is that progress? Because empty means you are ready for something else. Enduring means you have stopped trying to live. Pip's tail wrapped tighter. You taught the galaxy about survival, but you forgot to teach yourself about what comes after. And what comes after? That, Pip said, is what we figure out together. The sensor array failed when two of Titan Gate's moons aligned, creating gravitational pulls. David suited up without complaint. Just another repair. Pip watched him prepare. I could help. Too cold for you. Besides, this is routine. I'll be back in an hour. David. Pip's voice stopped him. Be careful. Something in the dragon's tone made David pause. I'm always careful. No, you're always competent. That is different. David cycled the airlock and stepped into the cold. The repair was not routine. A micrometeorite had punched through the housing, damaging circuits. David worked quickly, fingers clumsy in heavy gloves. The cold seeped in. Through his helmet display, he saw Pip watching from the window. The work took longer than expected. By the time David sealed the housing, his fingers were numb and his core temperature had dropped 2 degrees. The suit's warnings were insistent that he made it back and cycled through. Warmth hit him like a wall, but he was shaking. He got the helmet off before his fingers stopped cooperating. Pip was there, helping with catches. You are freezing. Just need a minute. David's teeth were chattering. The dragon got the suit off and herded David to the common area. Seat. David sat because his legs were shaking. He'd pushed too hard, stayed out too long. The job had seemed more important than staying warm. That was the problem. The job was always more important. Pip returned with every blanket. He piled them on, then climbed up and pressed himself against David's side, sharing heat. You will be okay, Pip said. David nodded. Too tired for anything else. You scared me, Pip said quietly. You do that a lot. Push yourself past safe limits. Tell yourself it is necessary. It's my job. Your job is to maintain the station, not at the cost of your safety. Pip's tail wrapped around David's arm. In my clutch, we would not allow this. We would insist you rest. Take help. Value yourself as much as you value the work. Your clutch sounds smarter than me. We have learned that individuals are precious, that losing even one diminishes us all. So we protect each other, even from ourselves. They sat in silence while David's shaking eased. His temperature climbed. The warnings faded, but Pip didn't move away. I have been thinking, the dragon said, about humans. What about us? Everyone says you are the endurance ones. Strong because you need nothing. Pip shifted slightly. But that is not what I see when I look at you. What do you see? Someone who has forgotten how to ask for what he needs. Someone who thinks survival is the same as living. Pip's voice was gentle. Someone who is very tired. David's throat was tight. Yeah, I asked you once if humans feel cold. You said all the time. Pip looked up. I have watched you, David. You eat alone, sleep alone, work alone. You have built walls so high that even warmth cannot reach you. It's easier that way. Easier than what? Than letting people in and losing them again. So you chose to lose everyone slowly instead. That is not easier. That is just slower pain. David didn't argue because Pip was right. The dragon was quiet. Then he asked, David, I have learned much about humans, about your strength, your endurance. But I still do not understand one thing. What's that? Pip's voice was very small. Do humans need hugs too? The question hung in the air. So simple. So impossible. David's first instinct was to deflect, to rebuild the walls, to say he was fine, that he could endure, but Pip was pressed against his side, warm and real. And David was so tired of being strong, so tired of facing everything alone. The walls cracked, then crumbled. Yes, David whispered. It was barely audible, but it was the truth. Yes, we need hugs too. Pip didn't hesitate. His small arms wrapped around David. His wings folded around them both. His tail curled tight. And David, who'd spent 2 years holding everything together through will alone, finally let go. He didn't cry dramatically. But his breathing changed, and his hands shook, and he held onto this small dragon who'd seen through all his defenses. It's okay, Pip said softly. You do not have to be strong right now. I am here. David's arms came up slowly and returned the embrace. The dragon was warm and solid, proof that he wasn't facing the darkness alone anymore. They stayed like that for a long time, until David's breathing steadied and the shaking stopped, and some of the weight he'd been carrying felt lighter. When they separated, Pip looked at him seriously. That was not weakness. Felt like it. No. Weakness is drowning alone when help is offered. Strength is admitting you need the help. The dragon's tail squeezed gently. You are very strong, David, but you do not have to carry everything yourself. David wiped his eyes. What did you get so wise? I have a good teacher, Pip said. He is teaching me that survival is possible. I'm teaching him that survival is not enough. The station felt different after that night. David couldn't explain how, but the walls seemed less oppressive, the silence less heavy. Pip noticed immediately. You are sleeping better. Am I? David checked his medical logs. The dragon was right. Deeper sleep, fewer nightmares. His stress markers were dropping. Yes, and you smile sometimes now. Small ones, but they are there. You keep track of my smiles. I keep track of everything. It is what Clutch does. Pip settled onto his usual spot, tail already reaching for David. We notice when those we care about are hurting, and when they begin to heal. David sat down, letting Pip drape across his lap. It had become natural. 1 week until your family arrives, David said. Yes. Pip's tone was complicated. You don't sound excited. I am excited to see them. I have missed my Clutch terribly. Pip's claws kneaded gently. But I worry about you. What happens when I leave? Will you go back to how you were? I don't think I can, David admitted. You've kind of ruined isolation for me. Good. That was my intention. They've fallen into new rhythms that felt like friendship. Pip would curl against David while he worked. During meals, they talked about everything. Pip's childhood, David's memories of Earth, cultural differences. In my Clutch, we have a saying, Pip mentioned one evening. Alone, we are strong. Together, we are unbreakable. That's good. Humans need a saying like that. All your sayings are about individual strength. Stand alone. Be independent. We have sayings about teamwork, David protested. Yes, but about accomplishing tasks. Not about emotional support. Not about simply being together. Pip's tail twitched. I think humans are afraid of needing each other. David thought about that. Maybe. We don't want to be burdens. But everyone needs help sometimes. That is not being a burden. That is being alive. The nightmares still came occasionally. But now, when David woke, gasping, Pip was there. The dragon didn't try to fix anything. He just pressed close until David's heartbeat slowed. Thank you, David would whisper. Always, Pip would respond. David started responding to messages with real honesty. He told his colleague about Pip, about the lessons he was learning. The response was warm, relieved. We've been worried. Glad you found someone who could reach you. He video called his sister for the first time in 18 months. She cried when she saw him. You look better, she said. Thinner, but better. Like you're actually there instead of going through motions. I had help, David admitted. Pip waved from his shoulder. His sister laughed through tears. Only you would adopt a dragon. I didn't adopt him. He crash-landed. Sure, keep telling yourself that. After the call, Pip studied David. That was hard. Yeah, but good hard. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Healing is not comfortable. It is necessary. 5 days before the ship arrived, David made a decision. He recorded a message requesting a transfer. Not to another isolated post. Somewhere with people. Somewhere he could practice Pip's lessons. You are leaving. Pip's ears perked. Eventually, after your family picks you up. But yeah, I'm leaving. Where will you go? I don't know yet. Somewhere I can be useful, but not alone. Maybe one of the research colonies. Pip's whole body vibrated with pride. That is very brave. It's terrifying. Yes, that is why it is brave. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite fear. They spent the remaining days preparing for separation. Pip taught David contact gestures from his culture. A tail touch that meant I am here. A wing brush that meant you are safe. David practiced them, feeling awkward. Will these work with humans? Probably not. But you will remember what they mean. And remembering will help. Help with what? help you remember that needing comfort is normal, that reaching out is strong, that you do not have to face everything alone. Pip's eyes were bright. I will not be here to remind you, so you must remember yourself. 3 days before arrival, David found Pip staring out at the ice fields. Homesick, he asked. Yes, but also sad to leave. Pip looked up. I crashed here because of an accident. I could have died, but instead I found something unexpected. A grumpy human, a friend who needed saving as much as I did. Pip's tail wrapped around David's wrist. You saved my life, David, but I think maybe I saved yours too. David knelt down, bringing himself to Pip's level. You did. You absolutely did. Then we are even. Not even close. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. What is that? Hope that things could get better. That I could feel something besides grief and exhaustion. That being alive could be more than just enduring until the end. David pulled Pip into a hug. Thank you. Pip hugged back fiercely. You are welcome. But David, this is only the beginning. Healing is not a destination. It is a journey. I know. You cannot go back to hiding when I leave. I won't. I promise. Good. Pip pulled back slightly. Because if you do, I will come back and drag you out myself. David laughed, real and genuine. I believe you would. Of course I would. That is what friends do. That night, they slept as they had for weeks. Pip curled close, David's hand resting on the dragon's back. Both breathing easy. Both healing. Both no longer alone. The Draken ship appeared as a bright point against the stars. David tracked its approach while Pip vibrated with excitement. They're close now. Nervous? David asked. Yes. Happy but nervous. What if I have changed too much? They'll recognize you. And change isn't bad. Pip looked at him. You have changed too. Yeah, for the better. The ship landed with precision. The airlock opened and Drakens poured out. They were bigger than Pip, fully grown. Pip shot forward and was swallowed by his clutch. They wrapped around him, confirming he was real and safe. David watched, smiling. This was what Pip needed. Then Pip's head popped up. He chirped and pointed at David. The clutch turned as one. David raised a hand in an awkward wave. The largest Draken, gold with red streaks, approached. You are David, the human who saved our lost one. Just did what anyone would do. No, you did what few would. You gave him connection. She bowed her head. I am Lyra. I lead this clutch. You have our gratitude. You made my life better too. Pip bounced over. David, this is my clutch. Lyra leads us. And this is Zephyr, Coral, and Flint. David nodded to each. They studied him with curiosity. You live here alone? Coral asked. Yes. For now. That sounds lonely. It was, David admitted. Pip helped me realize that. Zephyr tilted his head. Pip says you're grieving. But healing. He's not subtle. Honesty is valued in clutch. Lyra moved closer. He also says you need a new purpose. That this isolation no longer serves you. David glanced at Pip. We talked about that. Good. Because I have a proposal. Our clutch is joining a research expedition. Multi-species crew. We will catalog new worlds. We need an astrophysicist. We need someone who Pip has adopted as clutch. David's heart stuttered. What? Come with us, Pip said. You do not have to be alone. Come explore with us. I'm not Draken. I don't know if I can live in a clutch environment. You have been living with Pip for weeks, Lyra said. You accept touch now. That is enough to start. But I'm different. I'll need space sometimes. We know. Flint spoke. We adapt. You will have your own quarters. Time alone when needed. But family when you want it. Balance. David looked at Pip, glowing with hope. You really want this? David asked. More than anything. You're my friend. I do not want to say goodbye forever. I want to see you heal. I want to watch you live instead of endure. David felt the last wall crack. I need to think about it. Of course, Lyra said. We will be here for 2 days. That night, David sat alone. The silence was oppressive. The space felt empty that he thought about his wife, his daughter. What would they want? To stay frozen in grief? Or to live again, to find purpose, to be happy? He knew the answer. The next morning, David found Lyra. I have conditions. Name them. I get my own space. I contribute skills, but I'm not a pet. And if this doesn't work, I get transport back. No hard feelings. Agreed. Someone needs to explain Draken sleeping arrangements. Lyra laughed. We sleep in piles, but you may sleep alone if needed, or with just Pip. We adapt. David took a breath. Okay, I'm in. Pip tackled him. Yes, you will not regret this. I better not. You are not leaving your life behind. Pip corrected. You are leaving behind the half-life you built from grief. You are choosing to live. 2 days later, David stood in his empty quarters. He'd packed everything that mattered. 2 bags. Pip waited. Ready. David looked at the station that had been his prison and refuge. Then at the dragon who'd taught him that needing help wasn't weakness. Yeah, I'm ready. They walked to the ship, Pip's tail wrapped around David's wrist. The gesture meant, I am here. David squeezed back. I know. The clutch waited. When David approached, they gave him space. But Lyra extended a wing in welcome. David stepped aboard. The ship was warm and bright. His quarters were comfortable. Pip appeared. How is it? Good. Strange, but good. You will adapt. We are. David smiled. Thanks, Pip. For everything. Thank you for saying yes. Both times. Both times. When I asked if humans needed hugs too. And when I asked you to come with us. Pip's eyes were bright. You chose to live. David pulled the dragon into a hug. Best decision I ever made. As the ship lifted and jumped into space, David watched Titan's gate shrink. He'd arrived broken and alone. He was leaving healing and surrounded. Pip settled against his side. Where are we going first? David asked. The Andera system. Unexplored. Potentially habitable planets. Sounds perfect. It will be. Life is better when you do not face it alone. David looked at his friend, his clutch, his new family. For the first time in 2 years, the cold inside him was gone, replaced by warmth, by hope, by knowing he didn't have to endure anymore, that he could live, and that made all the difference.